right. Let's see, does this work from here? Cool. Thanks everyone for coming. I've had a great time talking to all of you just in the past hour. And Michael and I have prepared a short presentation for the group that is not an introduction to ASDK. Everyone here should have some familiarity with what we're talking about, but is an overview of recent developments in the community, changes in the last few months, and a demo of some of the things that we've implemented in the Pinterest app. So I'm going to kick us off with that introduction, and Michael will take us through the core technical parts of the presentation, and I'll wrap up with the demo. Today we're going to talk about basically AsyncDisplayKit as of recently, as of this year, including the community and some of the core releases, framework additions in the last 3 months, like I mentioned, and revisit the 2.0 release plan in terms of the beta series that we're planning for API revisions and the final release, and then go through, again, Pinterest 6.0. So the community has grown incredibly fast in the past 9 months or so. We now have 91 people who have contributed to the code base, almost 8,500 stars. 1,400 people forking the project to do customizations is, pretty fantastic, pretty awesome for me to see. And almost 4,300 apps that, unique applications that have linked with ASDK. This doesn't tell us how many programmers are using ASDK today, but something like 600 apps are installed per week and seems to be in very active development. And Pinterest counts as one of those applications. So with that, I'll tell you a little bit about the past year that I referred to, the past 9 months. It's been by far the biggest year for the framework since it was released. We have had just truly unprecedented growth in the number of people using the framework, the number of people reaching out, the number of people making feature requests and contributing code. Very substantial things have been contributed, entire components. The rendering engine, like the thread scheduler that does asynchronous display, is 100% contributed by one person who has never worked on other parts of the project. And so that's been really inspiring for everyone who works a lot on the framework to see. And it's also been driven by a few core problems in the Pinterest app that are difficult to solve and required us to change the framework and add new capabilities. So the demo will go through a few of those areas sort of directly pointed out. So since we launched version 1.9 last November, there have been 2,500 commits, and the development process for Pinterest and working with the rest of the community has been consistently in the open, so everything we do is out and mastered. So how about AsyncDisplayKit 2.0? I was talking to a big group of developers last year and said that 2.0 would launch late last year. Didn't happen. The reasons are several, and the reality is that 1.9.x is actually the 2.0 API, and it has all of the features that we want ASDK 2.0 to have. Something like AS Layout Spec was a huge addition to the framework. It's the core of how we use it at Pinterest, and we've built a lot on top of that since then. But we didn't release the actual 2.0 because I felt it was not fair to say, this framework was complete in all of those new aspects without documentation and without final revisions to the API that we knew were necessary in order for the API to be intuitive and approachable to new developers. So it's specifically those new parts of the API and the documentation that have held us back from declaring that actual version number. That said, the version that we're using today is powering the entire Pinterest app. It's powering a lot of other clients out there. It's a battle-tested piece of software that's existed for several years. So I caution to use your discretion with new features as they come out, big new changes, new releases. It's up to you, how you want to wait to see if other people try those. But overall, I'm really confident in the version that we have out today. So our plan from this point is to launch 2.0 betas with small revisions to the API that are technically breaking changes. Something like the flex shrink property on ASText node will be enabled by default so that if you don't provide enough space for a text node, it will wrap instead of truncating. We think these things are more reasonable default behaviors and in general should not have any profound architectural impacts on any application, including Pinterest. And so that's really important to us, is to make those final tweaks so everything kind of works as naturally as possible. So all that said, why bother with any of this? I mean, this is a really complex framework. A lot of people have spent time working on it. There's a lot of challenges to solve. This is one of the reasons. We really care about applications being super fast and really pleasant to use, and this is actually a very hard problem. It's even more difficult when users have slow network connections or they have older devices, and we believe that some of the things we're doing in this framework allow a fundamentally better way to address those application development problems. Here's a scrolling example. This was actually taken earlier this year, several months before launch, before final optimization. So we were able to get 60 FPS on a very complex view. So really all ASDK developers want apps to be like this. And it's definitely not just Pinterest, it's also all of the other apps and many in this room that use ASDK. So I wanted to say thank you for trying this thing out, for being a part of the community, and for having the passion to set a great example to the industry of what is possible, even if it requires extra effort to learn how to do it and extra effort to debug. So let's go through a few of the great improvements that have come in the last 3 months. For this, I'll introduce Michael Schneider. He is the full-time maintainer of ASDK at Pinterest and has been working tirelessly in the last 6 months to bring huge numbers of improvements to the framework. I'm truly impressed with how much coordination and direct development one person has been able to do. So please welcome Michael.
Hey guys, I'm Michael, and I want to tell you about the last 3 months, what happened with AsyncDisplayKit, what features went into. And I want to start with image loading. AsyncDisplayKit now is based on pin remote image. I want to talk about the cool new video features we added with the AS Video Node and the AS Video Player Node. Then I will talk about accessibility support in ASDK, advanced memory management with range modes, and magical transitions and automatic subnodes insertion and deletion. So let's start with image loading. You know, Pinterest is a pretty visual app. There are a lot of images in there, and it's pretty important for us that these images are loading fast and automatically, and the developers do not have to do that much. So what we added is progressive JPEG load to the AS Network image node. There's now a new API that's called should render progress images, and as you see on the right side, it automatically loads the image with progressive images from your backend. The note is there, your backend needs to support progressive JPEG images, otherwise progressive JPEGs will not render this way. Another thing is actually one of the most requested features is GIF support, and with pin remote image we were able to support GIFs now, and it's the API that's called set animated image and is an AS image node. So because it's powered by pin remote image, we got automatic memory and disk caching for free, and you get it for free too. And all is powered, as said, by pin remote image, and pin remote image is based on pin cache, and both are maintained by Pinterest, and improvements are going in from our side. Another thing I want to talk is video support. So you know, video is the new hot thing. If you just look into Facebook or Snapchat, video is everywhere. So what we did is we split AS Video Node into AS Video Node and AS Video Player Node. AS Video Node is more like the AV Player layer class now. That means it's lightweight, and the core video playback is in there. And the AS Video Player Node is based on AS Video Node and is a full video player. It has playhead controls and is fully customizable, as you can see in this example. The cool thing is, as I said, it's fully customizable. You can change every button, basically every control in that AS Video Player Node. As you maybe saw yesterday in the keynote from Apple, accessibility is pretty important, and for us it's pretty important to support that. So what we did is we added accessibility support to ASDK. It sounds kind of easy at first, but because the powerful features of ASDK are based on core animation, and by default, core animation CI layer does not support accessibility, we added the best what we could do to add accessibility to core animation, basically. And so the cool thing is you don't have to do anything, and yeah. Furthermore, it's pretty important, or with accessibility, it's also that it enables us automatic UI testing via Xcode and Xamarin. And we just added that to the Pinterest app in the last couple of weeks, and we saw that this makes a massive difference if you have automatic UI testing. And based on accessibility, Xamarin and Xcode UI testing see now these nodes and can test them automatically. So another thing is new range capabilities. One problem came up is because Pinterest is so rich with images and data loading that at some point we hit some memory limit issue, and we had to work around with that. So we added new range modes. To know what actually range modes are, I want to introduce you to the intelligent preloading mechanism we support in ASDK. That means if you see the home feed of Pinterest, there are different sections. You see the bottom one, it's the fetch data section in yellow. We have the orange one, it's the display section, and the red one is the visible section. For a node, this means if it's in the yellow phase, hey, it's time to fetch data. If the user scrolls further, it goes into the display phase. The display phase to the node in the display phase starts to rendering text, starts to getting the layer together, renders the layer, and assigns it to the node. And in the visible area, it's at least one pixel of the node is in the visible area. It should be fully visible. That is the range types. And here you can see it slides through the home feed, and the nodes go into different areas. Furthermore, it's also working on the horizontal direction. So here you can see on the bottom, there's no preload yet for the horizontal direction. It goes up. You see now this drums collection node, and each area you can see where the nodes are. And then if you scroll over, it's the same way as they would scroll from the bottom up. They go into different areas. So what actually changed, or what did we add? So there are different range modes, and range controller can be in. What is a range controller? A range controller powers the this is what we actually saw before. When are the nodes going into different states, and when are they going out in different, into the different areas? So we had the full and the minimum. The full provides the best experience for the end users. The minimum is at the beginning, if you is graded and there's less data fetched. So how can we actually reclaim memory? How can we do it in an intelligent way that ASDK can reclaim memory management? So we added two more range modes. One is visible only and low memory. This means visible only means that only the nodes that are in the visible area you saw before, the red one, are basically, the data is there and is rendered. In all the other, in fetch data, it is, the nodes don't have data and are not rendered. Another one is low memory. So ASDK automatically will remove the data and the content of the node if your app gets a low memory warning. So this is automatically handled from ASDK. So we added that as soon as your app goes into application suspending mode, we move the range controllers into the visible only range mode. That means only the nodes in the visible area have data. The rest in the other areas on the top and the bottom, we remove the data. So we reclaim this memory so we can save memory. Another thing is, the automatic range mode adjustment for memory warning. As soon as your app gets a memory warning, we basically clear the nodes and reclaim memory. Another thing we added, that's actually a new API for the ASU controller. If you subclass ASU controller, you can set automatically adjust range mode based on view events. That means, let's say you have you push a lot of view controllers on top. So you have a stack of view controllers, and every view controller has a lot of nodes. So there's a lot of data. But actually, the view controllers in the bottom, at the bottom of the stack, does not really need the nodes yet, or does not really need the data, and also not really need to have it rendered. So what we do is we intelligently figure out which view controllers in the stack does not need any data or rendered any rendered nodes, and we just clear that memory. So you basically get that also for free. And both of this automatically adjustment of the range mode is based on this new APIs that you actually can call. It's a protocol, it's AS Range Controller Update Range Protocol, and you actually can call methods like update current range with mode to yourself and set this collection node or table node in that range mode you want to have. And you can set via class method a default range mode for memory warnings. So this means if your app gets a memory warning, by default we would clear all of the apps of your collection view or table view node. If you set a specific range mode via this set update for memory warning class method, you can basically define how ASDK should behave on a memory warning. And with that, I will give it back to Scott. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. That was really awesome. Michael is very knowledgeable about all of these APIs and their implementation, so be sure to find him afterwards to ask any questions you have, not only about their adoption, but also their implementation details. I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about one of the more complex features that we have, which we're still giving a final name to, but ultimately it means you no longer need to manage subnodes, in other words, add and remove subnodes, so automatic subnodes, and allows really powerful transitions without writing animation code, which is interesting. So, you know, as an example here, it's pretty common in modern applications to want to take elements that are on screen and have some evolution of the UI that changes into another screen. Takes existing elements, moves them, maybe removes them, maybe introduces new elements. And normally this is pretty tough to build. You have to have really special cased things. It's difficult to do with auto layout, and it can lead to a lot of issues with kind of which views are in the hierarchy, especially if user starts to go backwards and these kind of things. And dialing in the polish and making sure that all the cases work is the really tough part. So AsyncDisplayKit, wanted to approach this problem and has two angles to solve it. The first is that automatic management of the subnode hierarchy, and then also building on that transitions between any two AS layout specs. So let's break that down. Automatic subnode management means that the elements that are present in the hierarchy are fully specified by the AS layout spec. This is interesting if you've used layout specs because to put things in a stack, you have to specify which things they are. And so if they should lay out in a stacked way, then that implies that they should be in the hierarchy. So we extended this a little bit further to say if it isn't in the layout spec, then it should not be in the hierarchy. And so if you enable this option, which is currently not on by default, but is one of the core pieces that will change for the 2.0 release when we do enable it by default, you no longer need add subnode or remove from supernode calls. The good news is this is not mandatory in the sense that code can operate with, these calls are harmless in the sense that if you have existing code that adds subnodes, it's not going to cause any problems. If you have code that does very fine-grained management of exactly which nodes are in the hierarchy at which time, and you use manual layout techniques, you may need to, in the future, disable this management. So for now, look for it in ASDisplayNode plus beta. We are using this very extensively in Pinterest, so as long as you're okay with that caveat that I mentioned in terms of the changes that are coming, then I encourage you to adopt it soon. So as far as the transitions, if you think about having an interface fully specified by an AS layout spec, what if you had two AS layout spec hierarchies? You had a stack with insets with nodes in it, and you wanted to convert to a different stack that had different nodes or maybe removed the insets. You can have very complex AS layout spec hierarchies that don't have matching nodes in them, but nonetheless, it's possible to use this API to convert between them. So all you need to do is make sure that option's enabled and then implement a layout spec that fits method that is able to specify more than one layout depending on some other state. So for example, here we have an enabled property that either adds text node 1 or text node 2. And so in the first layout pass, it's text node 1, and then later when we trigger a layout, an animation, we will return the other value, and then we'll be able to transition very easily. So the next step, once you have a layout spec that fits method, you can implement, optionally, a custom method to control the specific position and other values of every individual element. You can do really powerful things with this. By default, in 2.0, this will automatically fade in new nodes, move nodes that exist both in the starting state and the ending state to their new position, and fade out nodes that no longer exist. And so as long as that is okay, which we use for the majority of our transitions and find is a good sort of beginning default, you never need to implement this. But this is a hook that you can create really custom things with. Finally, you simply call transition layout with animation. This is kind of like an action or verb, like begin, transition the layout with an animation duration. And that really is it. Right after this method is called, we'll call layout spec that fits. One interesting tidbit is that this can actually be called asynchronously as well. And in that case, we perform the layout calculation for the new state asynchronously, and as soon as it is done, we trigger the animation. I'll show you an example in Pinterest where we use that. Just recapping really briefly, progressive JPEG is actually enabled on many JPEGs on the web today because progressive JPEGs are no larger than standard JPEGs, so it's enabled by default for many server-side compressors. So we have that option enabled by default that you get to benefit from. The AS video node, not only is it a lightweight wrapper around AV player layer, but we provide automatic preloading of the video frame, so you can add a JPEG on the top of it, or you can use a certain frame in the video, so you get a lot of benefit there. The new range modes are really, really helpful for complex infinite hierarchies, like if you have an app where you can drill down repeatedly into content and never reach a limit, helps dramatically. And finally, it's possible to implement some really amazing new designs with the layout transitions. So what's next? Basically, the 2.0 stuff I mentioned, the refinements we want to make are especially to the AS layout spec APIs. The APIs I mentioned are all sort of available and stable for use, but there may be especially naming changes to them, so look out for that if you'd like to adopt them early. Follow the website documentation. There's a lot of new content there, but improvements are coming soon. And lastly, we plan to do a more regular release cadence. So with that, we'll go straight to a demo of some of the Pinterest app, and I'll relate back some of the concepts we talked about. Cool. So this is a Pinterest app, and one thing I wanted to point out at the beginning is if you have the Pinterest app on your phone, you should look for what the color of the background is behind the pins. Here it's flush white. You might have a version that is gray. In that case, you may simply need to relaunch the app. If you've downloaded it recently, it may need to expose you to the experiment, but there's a small percentage of users who are not exposed to the new version, and in that case, feel free to talk to me. We'll get you added to the new version. That said, you can notice this really small little view here. This is a little debugging window that shows us information about the direction that the range controller is moving in. And so we can see that the relative size of the green region is the visible, the yellow region is the display range, and the red is the fetch data. This is really, probably tough to make out back there, but gives you a sense for, as we go around the app, kind of some of the different ranges that come into play. Here we have an AS table view that you can see is different than this AS collection view. So let's go into some content here. I'm a big fan of mechanical things, work on engines, and so you can see once we get into this content, we have another collection view that has appeared here. So one of the biggest challenges we had with this app, and the huge refactor that the team at Pinterest has been working hard on over the past few months, is the fact that you can swipe horizontally between pins. And we wanted this to feel really immediate, even if you were to scroll down into related content. And so, it's tough to know as an app developer, if I open this, how do I manage kind of loading this content as compared to, loading this content? And at what point, if you start going into pins one after another, at what point do you start releasing memory? These are actually really tough questions for a lot of apps to figure out. So this is where the AS visibility stuff that we talked about came into play. It's very important to manage memory properly in this scenario, and we found it really just needed to be systemized to be done properly. So a couple other interesting things about this view, which is arguably the most complex single view in Pinterest. When you open content on Pinterest, let me go to some that have maps, for example. One of our contributors is from Vietnam, and this is Huy on the open source project. He contributed a lot of the AS layout spec code, and a couple of us just went to go visit him there, and I'm completely serious. And so as you can see, as this stuff loads, like this view in the middle wasn't there originally. It loaded fast, but if we open something else, I'll try to get a better example. You can see that map came in. Although we are still working on, the customized animations for each component, we were able to make the wide variety of asynchronously loaded content that comes in off the network at different times reliably appear in the right order without blocking the main thread by performing the layout for each of these components asynchronously and the transition to them also asynchronously. So at any given time, when we're loading these components here, we may also be loading the map or other metadata for another pin, and it may also be calculating the layout. So aside from that, let's see. So another thing we did was in the shop view, we can see a great example of a custom collection view layout, which was, a big challenge for the Pinterest team to come up with ways to integrate content like this with the range modes that we talked about earlier. And so if you haven't tried this yet, it's now possible to implement even mixed content collection views like this quite easily. So, that's all we had for you today, but we're going to be around for a couple hours after this and would love to talk to you about any questions you have or, specific demos of your app. You'd be welcome to use the screen and talk to other developers as well. Okay, so PSA is we actually have to go over to the couches again. So sorry about that, but we will definitely still be around to talk with everyone. Thanks.